All right. Well, it is 9:05, and we've got a good group of people here today for our first course on Action for a Peaceful World, and I'm super excited that you all have decided to join us and attend the class today. So this first course is our 9-week course about using the science of behavior to improve your personal life. And then we'll have 3 additional courses across the year, and I'm hoping that you all will decide to participate in those as well. So our first lesson in regard to improving your personal life with behavioral science is about, we're going to do an overview of psychological flexibility and the 10 flips. And so for those of you who have been looking into the course and what all is entailed in the course, it is designed as more as sort of an intensive book study, and there are 3 books that provide the basis of the courses. And the first one is acceptance is I'm sorry is a liberated mind by Stephen Hayes, and then his other book, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, which is the self-help book that walks people through the ACT process. And the last book, Flip the Script by Coit Cooper, he is not a behavioral scientist, but he is a motivational speaker who was a professor, and who is an all-around amazing person. And when I read his book, I was struck by the simplicity of the habits that he was encouraging people to learn and teaching people to use. And so what I want to try to do is bring all of it together so you can see the combination of behavioral science-based books as well as non-behavioral science-based books, which are starting to bring together the science, the neurological science and behavioral science into creating habits for living a more fulfilling life. So before we get started, most of you have seen the dashboard, and every time that we have a class, we're going to be starting with a check-in activity, which is a writing prompt. And so if you've already done this within your dashboard, great, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to go into their dashboard and complete the writing prompt. And you'll have 5 minutes in which to complete it. And for future lessons, what I'll have you do is just when you come in, you sign in, you'll go ahead and get started right away and do that activity on your own pace. And then after we're done with that, you'll have the opportunity, if you so choose, you can share what the writing prompt made you think of and what you wrote in response to that. And the goal of this is twofold. Number one is to check in for documentation purposes that you're here and that you're participating in the course. But it's also what I found when I'm teaching courses both to upper level learners and even at the high school and lower levels that I'm working at now, is getting that active responding from the very beginning to get people really engaged in what they're about to do is a good way to create that behavioral momentum where we'll all focus on the task at hand and what we're about to learn, and gets us checked more into the present moment. And so I'm going to stop sharing my presentation screen, and I am going to now share the dashboard for Action for a Peaceful World. And so within your dashboard, we'll start back at the home section to orient you. So when you sign in, you'll come in and be able to see your main dashboard, which shows all of the courses that you are enrolled in. And so you can see here that I'm enrolled in all 4 courses. And the first course that we are taking is the Taking Effective Action to Improve Your Own Life. So you would click on that course. And the beginning part is an overview of the course with the link to the Zoom meeting, and then each of the individual lessons. So these are the 9 lessons, weekly lessons that will be included in the course. And so the first one that we're on today is overview of psychological flexibility and the 10 behavioral flips. And so when you click on that course, you will then see all of the activities which are a part of that lesson. And so when you scroll down, you'll see the lesson content and lesson 1 check-in. So mine is already checked off because mine's already been completed, but so you'll have the description, you'll click on the writing prompt exercise, and then again, mine is already completed, but you'll click on the link, and as soon as you click on the link to begin the activity, the 5-minute timer will start, and you'll have an opportunity to type in there your response in response to that writing prompt. And when it's done, you'll be able to mark that activity as complete and move on to the next activity. So go ahead and take the time right now to click on that activity and begin it and complete it, and we'll check back in. So at 9:15, I will check back in and we'll move on to the next. Sorry about that. Looks like just about everybody's completed with the activity, so we'll jump back in. So again, next time during the lesson, what you'll do is you can go ahead and jump the gun and do it even before the lesson starts, or that will be the first thing that you do when you come and check in. So you just do it at your own pace, and then once everybody's checked in and ready to go, then we'll start the lesson. So I wanted to share, for each of the activities that I have you do, I will also share my responses to those, because one of the core things that I am trying to do with these courses is to take our traditional learning model that we're all used to in regard to getting continuing education, where you go to a class and you hear some information presented by a presenter, and all that information goes in your head, and you leave, and sometimes what happens is that you don't necessarily integrate all of that information into your practice, and that is generally because the full training system has not been fully completed, or the full training model. So many of you, I'm certain, are familiar with this term behavioral skills training, and so you have the instruction component is step 1. The modeling component is step 2. Step 3 is role play and interactive activities, and step 4 is in vivo coaching or feedback. And so what I am trying to accomplish within these courses is the first 3 steps of the training process, which includes the instruction, the modeling, and then also the role play and feedback, getting you involved in participating in hands-on activities to give you experience with the exercises and experience, so it's more of an immersive training opportunity for you, so you can take what you've learned and apply it and generalize it to other aspects of your life. And so for my response to this writing prompt, I want, and I will. The 4 things that came to my mind when thinking about this writing prompt was that I am ready to create positive change in the world. I have the strength and the courage to act right now. I want to create peace for all Earth's inhabitants, and I will change the world, even if it's just my own. And so what I'm trying to get across with this, and in my life in general, is this idea of, as a behavior analyst, I have struggled somewhat because I know the science and I can see all the pain and suffering that is happening in the world. And at times it can feel as though it's overwhelming and there's just so much to do, so many things that can be done, so many problems that we see in the world that I've gotten to different points in my life where it became so overwhelming it was hard to act because there was so much. And so to finally come to the place where I know and realize and accept and am more willing and able to take action, it's that when I've taken control of my own life and my own circumstances and worked to create change in my own personal world, then I am more able to help others create change. And so shifting the focus from what we have been trained to do, which is address other people's problems, turning that around and going more inside to address the things that are going on with us can have a profound impact on the level of impact that you're going to be able to have with your clients and colleagues in the future. I'm going to share a little bit about the origins of FAFWA, Action for a Peaceful World, and what all of these things really mean to me. I've done a lot of writing in the blogs and on the website, and really tried to paint the picture of how I came to be where I am today, and why I'm so passionate about sharing this information with other behavioral scientists, and then also, even further than that, disseminating the science of behavior further beyond the people who have already committed themselves to behavioral scientists and become BCBA. So Action for a Peaceful World came to, the initial spark for it was way back in 2016, so 4 years ago. And at that time, I was the clinical director overseeing 3 clinics serving individuals with autism, providing insurance-based services. And I had been certified since 2009 and had worked my way up really quickly from clinician to clinical supervisor to clinical director. And that had always been my mission from the moment that I went back to school and to my master's program. I had this vision of myself that I was going to be a clinical director. And that was my story, and that was my vision for myself. And so that's what I fought for every day. Every day I'd get up and I'd grind and I'd work and continue to push to be that person that I told myself that I wanted to be, and I told everybody else that I wanted to be, because I felt like that was my mission in life, was to take what I knew about behavioral science and significantly impact the lives of individuals with autism and their families. But in 2016, I started to really have some difficulty staying focused and staying motivated, and I found myself really struggling to remember why I was doing what I was doing and why it really mattered. And so I started to kind of second guess what it was that I was doing and why I was doing it. So I began pursuing some professional development and trying to recapture that spark. And it kind of came to me that there were some changes that I needed to make in my life to reconnect with who I was as a behavioral scientist. And so within 2016, my husband and I got the opportunity to move up to Alaska to be closer with family and help my family out with their business. And it also gave me an opportunity to step back from the clinical behavior analysis and apply my skills in behavioral science and organizational behavior management to a different business model. And so we moved back to Alaska, and just prior to moving up, I began to envision what this new stage and this new phase in our lives would look like. And I had this idea and I had this spark that I want to take action to create a more peaceful world. And so it's just a spark of an idea, and I didn't do much more with it except for just kind of draw out what that would look like. So we're moving to Alaska, and we're going to be working on an oyster farm and have this piece of property that we eventually want to build our homestead on. And so I had this spark and an idea, but then I just kind of put that on the back burner and went about my life and switched gears and took my life in a different direction, moving back to Alaska. And so over the course of the next 2 years that we lived here, I was reading more and doing a lot of self-study, and I took the time to actually do more of a sabbatical from practice where I was still working and remaining actively engaged in my life, but not directly as a behavioral scientist. And then I was studying things on my own in order to really identify what it was that I cared about most. And so over the course of those 2 years, this idea really came to fruition from a little spark of an idea. Something needs to change. I need to find a different direction into the full-fledged project and what it is right now, Action for a Peaceful World, and the vision that we have over the next 10 years and beyond to begin doing what we say that we want to do. Begin actually taking the action that's no longer theoretical and no longer just an idea on paper, but it's physically taking the steps to do that. And so Action for a Peaceful World was born in 2016 as an idea and has really taken about 4 years to fully develop into what you see today. Cruising with Babs, if anybody has read any of the blogs that I've put out there, I have this, when you're thinking about businesses and missions and visions and branding, I wanted to create something that people could hold on to and an identity that you could hold on to. And so I love acronyms. It's always been one of my things. I like to, create phrases and inspirational mottos that have a shortened version of them. And so I had this idea of, I want people to go cruising with me. I like to go for drives. I like to go on boat rides. I want to go for a cruise, and we're going to talk and we're going to inspire each other. And so this idea of Cruising with Babs stands for Badass Behavioral Scientist. And my idea is that bring us all together, we go for a cruise, we can go for a ride. Today and right now, that looks like online lessons, but eventually, I really truly want it to be where people will come up to Alaska and we'll go for a cruise, and we will really dig in what it means to live life to its fullest and live a value-based life. And incorporate the lessons learned from behavioral science into every day to create positive change, not only for ourselves and our families, but for our communities more broadly. The third main big project and big idea that you'll see kind of woven through the website and is a bigger project is the Thrive Warrior program. And so this came to fruition last year when I got the opportunity to take over as a temporary special education teacher locally. And what I found was that there were a lot of students that I was working with who had very significant histories of trauma and neglect. And they really needed some more training in terms of their behavioral regulation, emotional regulation. And I had recently completed the Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life series and wanted to see if there was something that I could incorporate into my teaching for these adolescents that would really help them. And so I found there was a adolescent version of that program for teens. And so I created some lessons and created Warrior Club as a place where these kids who were struggling to succeed within the general education environment due to their behavioral excesses and emotional regulation challenges. And I brought them into a weekly group where we were working on things related to identifying their values, clarifying their values, identifying their goals, and living a more value-based life. And so thrive, thrive means to thrive. We are striving to thrive every day. But thrive for me, what I did for the students was I created the value set that I wanted to teach them and to incorporate into our daily lessons, and give them something that they could hold on to throughout the day and utilize across context. And so to thrive, to me and to them, and what I want to incorporate across our programs, is to thrive means to be trustworthy, honest, respectful, inspiring, value-driven, and engaged. And when we strive every day to live our lives in accordance with these values, then we will be able to thrive as individuals and as a community. Destination Humanity. For those of you who have known me for a while, about 2 years ago, I began to write a book entitled Destination Humanity: The Code to Living a Happy, Healthy, and Productive Life. And that is still in the works. But my idealistic self, thought that writing a book was something that was very simple to do. And I would just sit down and I'd write this book and here we go. But we all know that life doesn't really work that way. The book project itself was sort of put on the back burner in order for me to do all of the additional work necessary building up to eventually writing and publishing a book. So right now, a lot of the blogs and the writing that I'm doing is in preparation, so taking the information that I'm studying and then putting that into a form that is easily digestible for the general public, so I can get feedback on that content, which will then be put into an actual book. And then the big, gigantic dream that I am really excited to be able to share with everybody when it comes to fruition is our Alaskan oasis, which this is the big vision. I live on an island that is the 4th largest island in the United States. We have a population of around 5,000 people, and those 5,000 people are spread across 12 communities. I live in rural Alaska, and in this community, as in many rural communities, there are significant issues with substance abuse, domestic violence, poverty, and all the associated challenges that come along with those things. And so as I began to think about what the world that I wanted to create for myself up here in Alaska and my family, I really started to hone in on this idea of creating a place where people could go to get the help and the support that they needed to create more peace and success in their own lives. And so Alaskan Oasis, the dream for it is to be an oasis, a retreat where people can come with lodges and cabins and therapeutic services to help people face and overcome the challenges that they are dealing with on a daily basis. Because sometimes it takes more than just talking about what's going on in your life and making small changes. Sometimes it does take a removal from your environment to really understand what is going on at the core of you and at the core of your challenges, so you can reorient yourself to your values and find your compass north again, and then begin stepping in the right direction. And I can't think of any better place to do that and to reset yourself than Alaska. And on Prince of Wales Island, it is one of the most beautiful, pristine places that you'll ever see. And there's magical healing. Not really, but I want to provide a place where people can come and really live what it means to live a valued life, and then be able to learn the skills that are going to help them in their, when they go back to their own home and their own life. So I already oriented you a little bit to the dashboard, but just a little more on that. So there are exercises within the dashboard that are going to be completed during the lesson. So you all are participating in the live lesson, but if you're unable to participate in the live lesson, the recordings will be posted and embedded within the course dashboard within a week. And so then you will be able to complete the lesson activities as well as watch the videos on your own pace and still be able to gain credit for participating in the courses. In another part of the dashboard that I want to encourage you all to participate in, because this is intended to be a community of people that we're pulling together who really care about the dissemination of behavioral science. They really care about actively engaging within their communities to create positive change and not continuing to sit idly by. So we created this forum as a place where we can have very in-depth discussions about what are we doing, and how are we in fact positively impacting the lives of ourselves and others, and what challenges are we having, and how we can come together and work together and collaborate to solve some of these bigger issues that we're facing as individuals and communities and as a world. So it's a place where we can come together and collaborate, and I hope that you all take an opportunity to see the discussions that I've already posted and hopefully respond to those, as well as taking the time to pose your own questions to the community to get feedback, as well as we all get more comfortable with each other and know each other better and what our individual goals are and how we can work together. So the structure of the courses will always start with a writing prompt. Then I will be presenting some material. We'll have hands-on activities, and then a moderated discussion where we can all share out or ask questions. And then within the course dashboard, there is your checkout activity, which is feedback. So there are 3 questions related to the course or the lesson, for us to get feedback to help us refine and make better the program over time. And then there is homework that isn't required homework, but those are activities that I put in there to create a more immersive experience. So between each of the lessons, if you want to participate even more in depth, then you would complete the exercise, complete the homework. And you'll see when you go in to complete the homework, there is an option to say, I didn't do this, and that is okay. But each of those questions needs to be answered in order to get your certificate at the end. So you don't have to have completed the homework to get the certificate, but you do need to answer the questions that you didn't do that homework, if that makes sense. And if there are any questions about the dashboard and the lesson, the objectives and the exercises as you're going through them, if there's any feedback, we want it and we need it, because we want to make sure that this experience is as it's coming across exactly how we want it to. We want you all to feel engaged and that you're learning and that you're getting the most out of your experience. So please, please, please provide us with any feedback that you come up to. Okay, before we move on, I just want to pause here and open it up for any questions about the structure of the course, about anything. If you have any questions about how it's going to work, or what we're doing here. Excuse me. So the first lesson, we have our 3 objectives. We're going to conduct a personal assessment to identify your areas of needed improvement. You're going to select your top 3 areas of needed improvement to focus on during the training. So we use what our assessment results show us, and we prioritize and select the most important ones to address first. And then you will be writing goals for each of those individual areas. And so one point that I will continue to reiterate is that as behavioral scientists, we have an ethical responsibility to ensure that we have our own personal resources available to ensure that we are able to provide the most effective and most efficient services. Which means that if you are in a place in your life where you're struggling to keep up with what the work that you're doing, then you're not being effective and you're not being efficient, and that should tell you that there's something that you need to do. There's something that you need to change in order to be your best self, in order to help the people that you want to help. We all have come into this profession believing something about the world and what we can do to impact change. And it is so common to drive and push and grind every single day and give everything of yourself. But what happens is that many times we begin to neglect our own individual needs, and if you think of yourself as like you're filled with gas, like a gas tank, and I have all this energy and all these resources, eventually those resources are going to be depleted and you will have nothing left to give. And that was where I found myself back in 2016, was that I had pushed so hard and I had given so much, and but in doing so, I had neglected my own personal well-being, my mental health, my physical health. And I knew that something had to give and something had to change. And to me, it took going back to the ethical code and really coming to terms with what that code means, what it means to ensure that you are healthy and available to provide the services to the level that you need to, and regain that balance. And so we can apply the same principles which apply to the clients which we work with and we were trained to work with. Those same principles apply to us. We can do our own personal assessment. We can prioritize our own areas of need, and we can write our own goals. And by going through these steps, it becomes easier over time to maintain that balance and maintain those boundaries. So why do we need to pivot? When do we need to pivot? We need to pivot, and to pivot just means to change direction. So right now I'm going in this direction, right? And I need to pivot, and I need to take all of that energy and move in a different direction. So being able to identify those moments in our lives when we need change, when we need to pivot, is critical. And it takes being open and honest with yourself first and foremost, and being able to take a step back and realize that if I don't take care of these stressors in my life, I am going to be less effective. I'm not going to be able to continue doing what it is that I want to do. And we see this all the time. For many of you are part of Facebook groups where that becomes the common conversation is, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed out, I want to leave, I want to go live on an island in the middle of Alaska and leave it all behind. And I get it. I was there, and it did take me leaving. I did leave practice, and I did move to the middle of nowhere in Alaska to kind of recapture what it is that I am all about. But it doesn't necessarily have to take that. Luckily, I had an opportunity to move back here. I grew up in Alaska, but I had the opportunity to move back up here with family. But it shouldn't take that. So being able to stop when you notice those things going on in your life, identify what is happening in your life that needs to be addressed. What are you ignoring? And what can you change? What direction can you turn in order to take more effective steps in the right direction? So for me, my need to pivot came in 2016. I had a major shift in motivation. I was having a hard time keeping up. I was just, I was stressed all the time. I'd get up and I'd get to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't leave until 6 or 7 at night. And, and then I still felt like I never got anything done. And, everybody was disappointed, whether they were or not. That was how I felt about the situation. I'd get home and have every intention of making a healthy dinner, but, it was late and I didn't have time to do that. So we'd stop and get fast food, or just, make something quick and unhealthy. And it just became this negative cycle of, it's not, my life isn't going the way that I want it to, but I don't know how to change it. So I'll keep living my life. It's still not going the way I want it to. So it just was this negative cycle. And so what I attempted to do was to PD myself into action, to professionally develop myself into action. So, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to ABBA this year, and I'm going to take the reins back and find my motivation again. But what ended up happening through that was that I kept hitting, it was roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And the path to getting to ABBA in 2016 in Chicago was a series of unfortunate events all in and of itself. And then when I got to ABBA, I chose my course sequence. It was all related to humanistic behavioral science and taking charge of your own life. And I was focused. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I'm going to really start to change my motivation. And I'm gonna go back to work, and everything's gonna be great. But then it wasn't. I went back to work. I pulled all the stuff that I learned at that conference, and I put it into a presentation, and I went into my next staff meeting, and I was like, okay, guys, here's all the stuff that I learned, and I'm really motivated to make some changes and help you all be more successful and get us back on the path for success. And that verve and that energy quickly dissipated. Because what I realized now, I didn't really realize it then, was that professional development wasn't the problem. That wasn't at the core of what was impacting me the most. There was something else going on. So in 2016, I had a series of more major life events, and I really had that aha moment that I needed to do something different. I needed to make a change. And so I did. And I, took an opportunity and took a chance to change my environment, thinking that might help, taking a step back from practice might help reorient me to what it was that I really want to do with my life and my practice. And so we moved back up here at the beginning of 2017. And over the course of the first 2 years here, there were some more really major life events that really shook me to the very core and kind of broke me down to my bare bones and allowed me to see in all of its glory what was really going on, and what were those things that were really creating these problems within my life, And it came down to that I was stuck in old habits, right? So I was responding to stimuli in my environment, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results and not getting them, surprise, surprise. And at that moment, I realized that, the tools that I had and the skills that I had as a behavioral scientist and that I had gained over all of these years were not that they weren't sufficient, but I wasn't applying them in the right way to the right problem and in order to create change in an effective and efficient manner. And as a behavioral scientist, that is my mantra: effective and efficient. I'm here, we're at point A, and we need to get to point Z. Are we going to get there as quickly and as cleanly as possible? And so, I would continue to beat myself up over the fact, like, I know this stuff. I'm a behavioral scientist. I should be able to get from point A to point Z in 0.6 seconds. And why aren't I there yet? And so, being able to take that step back, I realized, well, that's silly because I hadn't actually done the work to create the plan on which I could execute in order to get from point A to point Z in 0.6 seconds. I just had this idea of where I wanted to go and somehow thought that I would miraculously get there. And lo and behold, it didn't happen, to surprise nobody. And so it was at that point, really at the, within those 2 years between 2017 and 2019, that I realized what it was going to take in order to take effective action, to create more peace in my life for me, and not for anybody else, not for anybody else's reasons. I needed peace in my life so I could live my life to the fullest and then be able to help others more effectively and more efficiently. So that was where my need to pivot came in. So in the book, A Liberated Mind by Stephen Hayes, so he introduces the 6 pivots, which these are the 6 flexibility points within psychological flexibility. And over the next few lessons, we'll be diving much more deeply into these concepts. But as just a general overview, the first pivot is diffusion. So it's that realization that thoughts are just thoughts. They aren't necessarily reality. They are just electrical impulses that are evoked by environmental stimuli, both internal and external. And we have the choice about whether or not we are going to buy those thoughts, whether we are going to believe them or stick to them or let them control our choices. And so being able to be aware of our thoughts and what impact that's having on our daily actions is really critical, because it can allow us to take a step back from our immediate moment or in our immediate surroundings and make choices based on our value set. And that only comes to becoming diffused from those thought patterns. Because as you know, like, one thought leads to another thought, leads to another thought, and leads to an action. And if those patterns are tightly linked, it's hard to break that cycle. The second pivot is related to the self. And so there's the idea of your conceptualized self versus your true self. So your conceptualized self is that image of who you are and who you're supposed to be. And your true self is who you want to be. Who do you want to be in this world? Who do you want to be seen as? And really, for me, going back to kind of my history and my life story, I spent a lot of my life in living a life as my conceptualized self based on who I believed I needed to be to make the people in my environment happy and make them content, without realizing that I was neglecting my true self and my true kind of who I am at the core of me and what drives me to be who I am. The third pivot is related to acceptance. And so this is the idea that in order to be able to move forward in your life, we need to be able to accept the things that are for what they are, and let them be what they are, and still take action. Because if we spend our lives fighting what is, fighting to like change the narrative. Well, that's not really what it is, and it must be something else. And so I'm going to focus all my time and my attention on, fighting that reality. If you're investing your resources in that fight, you are going to be less likely to live life to its fullest, because you're focused on changing the past, as opposed to letting the past be the past and accepting what the circumstances as they are, and making the choice to continue moving forward while that is still there. You didn't get rid of it. It's always going to be there. Those thoughts, those events, those memories, that history will always be there. But it doesn't define who you are or what is to come. The fourth pivot is related to presence, so being here now in this moment. Many times we face challenges in our lives because our thoughts and our minds are not connected to the physical location where we are. And so in this space where I am right now, there are a plethora of environmental cues to which my brain is attempting to attend. If also my brain power is being diverted to attending to other things that are outside of this environment, so my thoughts, I'm kind of perseverating about what happened in the past, or I'm worrying about what's going to be happening in the future. When you divert your brain process and your cognitive capabilities to things outside of the present environment, outside of the present moment, it is likely that you are going to be missing critical information, number one, and you're going to be missing critical opportunities to build, establish, and maintain the relationships within that environment. And so because if you're focused and your attention is focused over on this other thing, it is really hard to remain focused on what's going on in the here and now in the present moment. And so whoever is in your environment, be it your family pets or your spouse or your children or your colleagues or your clients, they are not getting all of you and all of your abilities. They're only getting a part of you, which causes problems if you are not able to remain in the present moment. The fifth pivot is related to your values and being able to clarify what it is that you care deeply about. Your values aren't your goals. Your values are your compass. That's your true north. These are the things that I care about. This is why I do the things that I do. This is who I want to be seen as. I want to be seen as a person who cares about the health of themselves. I want to be seen as that person. So I am going to there are actions that I'm going to be able to take, or that I'm willing to take, in relation to that value. So that's your true north. What do I care about deeply, and why? And then the sixth and final pivot is related to action, related to what are you willing to do right now. One of the people who was most pivotal and most critical in my aha moment, my spark of inspiration that I need to start taking action for a peaceful world is Scott Geller. And so for any of you who have read any of his work or attended any of his talks or workshops, his movement is called Actively Caring for People. And so he was one of the people who was really critical in my change, my pivot from what I was doing and realizing that I wasn't actively caring for people. I wasn't actively caring for myself. I was just, in this spin, this negative cycle. And so, the one thing from him that I always go back to in relation to actions, so what the actions that you're deciding to take or that you're considering, when you're considering them, it's helpful to consider 3 questions. Can you do it? Will it work? And is it worth it? So can you do it? Are you physically capable? Do you have the resources? Can you actually do the thing that you want to do? Will it work? So will the action that you're taking actually create the change that you want to create? And is it worth it? Is the benefit of that action, the end outcome, is that going to produce, or is it going to be worth the risk, worth the resources that you're putting into it? And so we'll definitely be diving into that more deeply. So one thing that I have learned as I have been studying psychological flexibility and acceptance and commitment therapy is coming into contact and identifying who is the dictator within, right? That voice in my head that tells me what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing, that voice in your head can be so overwhelming. And so what I've had to learn and what I hope to be able to teach you all how to do is to really learn to listen without responding emotionally, without getting emotionally invested in it, but just really listen, be open, take a moment to be present in this moment and think about the words that are being generated by your brain and thinking about the control that is physically having over your actions. And you can, as you become more able to do this, you can, start to listen to your own thoughts. You can feel the physiological reaction because you have a thought. It might evoke a release of endorphins within your body, and that has a physiological correspondence. And so that can have a significant impact on our willingness and our ability to take action when necessary. And so, it causes this hesitation, like, oh, I want to do this. Oh, but this, the dictator within, this voice in my head is saying, nope, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. You've got these other things to do. And it creates this situation in which we're second guessing ourselves and we're hesitating and we're not taking action when we should. And this has been, for me personally, one of the most critical components to my ability to pivot and switch and begin taking a more active role in my own success in my own life. And a few months ago, I had an experience that was really for me the first time when I was able to really listen and to really feel what this concept was talking about. And so the story is called The Dump and the Almost Missed Opportunity. I went to a training in Juneau a few months back, and I was going for a walk, and I was walking along. This was after the conference, and I had nothing else to do. I was just hanging out, and I was walking, and over to my right, I saw this big green building that said the rock dump on it. And I was like, that's interesting. And I got a little bit closer, and I could see underneath where it said the rock dump, it said a climbing gym. Well, I've rock climbed before. I like to, if you had asked me, I would say like, yeah, I love rock climbing, but I love rock climbing has never really turned into I rock climb on a regular basis. It was I learned how to rock climb. Back in my early years of college, my bachelor's days, and I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. It helped me kind of overcome some fear of heights and take more charge. But then I didn't do it for years and years and years because of all of these reasons I would list out. I don't have time for that. I don't have the money for that. I've got other things to do. I'm too busy. I've got work. I've got these other responsibilities. I can't take time out for myself to do something that I enjoy because nobody got time for that, right? But so during this moment, I was walking there and I saw this place and I had nothing else to do. I was at a training. Nobody, it was just me, and I had all of this free time, and I saw that place and had thought like, oh, that might be fun, and almost instantaneously, that negative self-talk of, no, you can't do that. You don't have time. You got to get back to the hotel, and you got to do this, and I stopped and paused and thought, whoa, that is a really strong urge to not do something that sounds like fun, that I have time for, that sounds like fun, that I have the money for, I think at least, and I haven't been there yet, so at least go check it out. And I had to physically force myself to take the steps down the hill, around the corner to get down to this place, and step through those doors to find out more about what was going on there. And I did it. I took that chance. I stopped hesitating. I stopped second guessing myself into inaction, and I went in there. And it turned out it was ladies' night at the rock gym, and there was there's this big group of women who get together on Wednesday evenings, and they all climb, and it's discounted rates, and they had shoes and harnesses available. And it was, I still felt that physiological, like my heart's racing, my stomach's clenching, this is uncomfortable, but it's also something that I really, really, really want to do, something that I really care about, that I would tell you that I care about it, but in my action, you wouldn't necessarily have known that that was true. And so at that moment, I said, thank you, dictator within, and we'll call him Frank. If anybody has ever, you might also have read some of the ACT literature and about giving your mind a brain, or giving your mind a name. And my dictator within, his name is Frank. And so thank you, Frank, for telling me that I don't have time for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Thank you so very much for your input. And I ended up having a great time and meeting some really cool people, and it was totally worth it. Totally worth ignoring Frank, or thanking him for his input and choosing to act anyway. So how do we find that way forward? How do we decide and know that what we are going to do is going to have the most impact and create the most change? As people who are trained in the science of behavior, we have learned that behavior is predictable and it's influenceable, right? So we can study and analyze patterns of behavior, and we can come to conclusions about why things happen the way that they do. And then we can predict that, okay, well, because of this learning history and because of these behavioral patterns, we can predict that under these circumstances, this will happen, right? And then we also can influence that, because if we know that this, this is the pattern, so this is the likely outcome, then we have the ability to influence that, and we can change the environment, we can manipulate the environment in order to sway the direction that it's going, right? So we have this predicted outcome, but we can also influence the outcome by modifying the environment. Okay, so finding a way forward. So we know that behavioral science has provided us with the tools and the ability to analyze patterns of behavior, predict future behavior, and influence future behavior. Acceptance and commitment therapy has developed as the third wave of psychological intervention, which has been shown now in multiple instances to be profoundly impactful on changing patterns of behavior. And so those 6 pivots within psychological flexibility and very short, simple exercises related to those have been shown to create significant change in populations of people where previously it was, the recommendation was years and years and years of therapy to rectify the problem if it ever got rectified, or you get no treatment, at all. But as a behavioral scientist and as somebody who has studied acceptance commitment therapy and psychological flexibility, I believe that a peaceful world is attainable for yourself, for your family, for your community. There are a lot of people, myself included, who previously, you knew this information but saw what was happening in the world, and it almost feels that it's an insurmountable challenge. And so the tendency is to give up or not put in the effort because, the world, it is what it is and nothing's ever going to change. But what we can harness, the power that we can harness, is that yes, change is possible. We know that that these things are these principles are widely applicable. But what it really takes is planning. So we need to create a clear plan of action that is technologically defined and conceptually systematic. We need to take action. We need to implement the plan and execute upon the plan and consistently check in on our progress. And the third key component is that we need to communicate. We need to be able to effectively communicate, gather information from, provide information to those key stakeholders within our environment, within our community, who are going to be pivotal in ensuring that a plan is brought to fruition. So where this really came to reality for me, and I got hit full force with the impact and the challenges that are being faced in this world, kind of outside of this bubble of behavioral science, was in relation to the community board here on the island that I became a part of. And I went in there and really excited, and they needed people on the board. It's a very small community, so we're always looking for people to help. And so I was all gung ho, and I wanted to get involved, and so I joined the board and I became the secretary. And I had an idea about how I could help, and things that I could offer from my perspective to help the board execute upon their goals and what they wanted to accomplish. And what I found was there was consistently the same recurring problem, right? we want to do this, but we don't have the money or we don't have the support, and so we don't do it. But we need to do that, and it was this negative cycle over and over and over. And the missing components were planning, effective action, and communication. And so this was my big kind of, personal experience with the what's going on in the real world outside of ABA, outside of providing intervention or doing interventions with individuals with autism outside of the school environment. I really started to realize that the issues are deeper and bigger, and there's a lot of change that needs to happen. And so, how can we find a way forward with still all of these big problems and make the most effective change possible? The challenge is, though, that our thoughts are so automatic and they're so convincing that it's hard to think otherwise, because we're so used to the thoughts that come to us. And, not just behavioral scientists, you all have an advantage because you have training in this information. But the reality is that the majority of people in this world do not. And we're all constantly responding to our thoughts. And because they happen without us thinking about them, they just come to us and they're just responses to those environmental stimuli. And so it becomes difficult to break that cycle of, when this happens, then my brain and my body respond this way. It's hard to break that cycle. And so one of the things that is really a critical component for being able to come into contact with the present moment, identify your thoughts as just thoughts, and remain in the moment and continuously act in accordance with your values, is to become more mindful and centered and focused on your environment. So for me personally, this started to become something that I noticed in between that 2017-2019 period. I began to notice my own automatic responses and automatic patterns that, to my environmental stimuli, that would, I would go from 0 to 60 without even knowing how I got there. And it, made me realize like how tightly linked that stimulus response chain was, and that I needed to take action to figure out how to break that. And so the one thing that happened in my life that made me really realize, number one, that I value very deeply my integrity and people believing what it is that I say, because I try to be honest with myself. I try to be honest with others. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I'm not going to be able to do the thing that I said I was going to do, then I'm going to communicate with that person. And so this has been something, throughout my life I've been very highly attuned to. Like, no, if I say that I did something, or I say that I'm going to do something, like, I'm going to do it because I value my integrity. And so I just can't live any other way. I just can't be any other way. And so there was an instance with the business we were working with where I did something, and I said, okay, here's what happened. Here are the events as they occurred. And the person on the other end was, like, nope, that's not what happened. You're lying. It didn't happen that way. And I was like, no, okay, so here's what happened. And so, I'm sorry that, we missed that call or we missed that sale, but here's what I'll do to make it up. And the person on the other end of the phone was like, nope, that's unacceptable. I don't believe you. And I was like, that triggered in me this huge emotional reaction. because it was, no matter what I did, no matter what I tried, this misunderstanding, which I was trying to explain, turned into an accusation that I wasn't who I said I was, and I wasn't doing the things that I said I was doing, and that triggered in me this evoked this emotional response that was over the top and it was out of character. Like I'm on the phone yelling at this person, and my husband walks in the door and he's like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I was like, explained to him what happened. He was like, "I think you need some more yoga in your life." And that was a wake up moment to myself that I was letting all of these things in my life really get to me, and I wasn't living, I wasn't able to fluidly engage in actions in alignment with my values. Like I don't talk to people that way. I don't interact with people that way. And it was that stark realization that I needed to do something different. I needed to become, more mindful and centered and be able to respond more fluently in the moment when needed. And that took that shift and that pivot from, being up here and kind of living outside of the moment to really being focused on in the moment, what matters most, who are you, what are you doing in accordance with those values, and if there's something that happens which challenges that, what is another action that you could take that is going to be more effective in addressing that problem. The problem is that our brains are constantly in problem solving mode. So it never really turns off. So every moment that we are awake and perceiving what's going on in our environment, our brains are trying to figure out what to do next. Okay, here's a problem and I need to solve it, and I need to fix this, I need to make this better. This is causing an issue, so I need to address that. But the reality is that, number one, not every problem can be solved or needs to be solved. Not every problem that is a problem is your problem that you need to solve individually. And because we have the training that we do, and because we're very compassionate people who want to create positive change in the world, we can find ourselves in these vicious cycles of trying to fix every problem that comes into our awareness. And so being able to realize and know and understand very, in the very, very realist sense, that just because your brain detects a problem doesn't mean that you have to solve the problem. And if you can learn to discriminate those things, you're bringing in all of this information through your sensory systems. I'm seeing and hearing and tasting and feeling and thinking, all of this information. Once you can effectively discriminate between, this is a problem, but it's not my problem, or it's not a right now problem, and you can learn to put those things in their place and triage what's most important. And then being able to give yourself an outlet for those, like the things that you have identified as a problem. You don't always want to just okay, I'm just going to put this over to the side and put it on the back burner. Sometimes there's another action that needs to be taken. There's somebody else who can take care of that. And so being able to triage, okay, these are my problems that I'm going to deal with and I'm going to take care of. And then these are problems that need to be taken care of, but they're not necessarily my problems that I need to be in charge of. And you can, as you're more able to discriminate and triage those problems, you can delegate better or put things to the side, put things on hold, give yourself the space and the time and to focus your attention and your energy and your resources on the things that are of most highest importance to you and to your life, and then allow those things just to be what they are. Yes, it's a problem, and we're just going to just allow them to be a problem until we're ready to get to them, or assign the solving of that problem to someone else. And so we've all heard this term, the curse of compassion. And it is very true. We find ourselves in situations where there are a lot of problems, right? We live in a world in which there are a lot of problems. There's problems within your home. You know, your kids aren't getting along. The dishes aren't getting done. There's not enough money in the bank account, or you're going into your work environment and this person was supposed to have this thing done by this date, but they didn't, so I can't do the thing that I need to do. Or you go into a family home and you see 100 things that need to be addressed, and so the tendency is to try to jump in all at once, because we're compassionate, caring people. We want to alleviate suffering. We want to alleviate pain. But in our birth to do that, we can find ourselves giving too much and ending up not doing the right thing because we're trying to solve too many problems at one time, and we're diverting our resources across too many problems, to the point where we're neither effective nor efficient, and we are highly likely to get burned out. So being able to put things in their place, give things away, give yourself an outlet where you can just let things be what they are, and then get in the habit of just letting things be, letting things go, and focusing your attention 100% on the things that are most critical in that moment. You will find yourself to be much more able to tackle the challenges in your life. So as we identify the problems and we've narrowed down, okay, these are the problems that I need to deal with. Okay, they're very difficult problems. They are things in our lives. There are things in our lives which cause us pain and cause us to suffer. And many times, because it's a natural human response to avoid pain, we engage in behaviors for a reason. We engage in behaviors to access something good or to avoid something bad. And many times the things that cause us the most hardship and heartache in our lives are those things that we have consistently avoided, because when we don't avoid them, when we look at them directly, it hurts. And we don't want to be in pain. And so the natural kind of habitual reaction is to just make it go away. Just make it stop. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I just don't want to deal with it. I need it to stop. And so we work really hard to numb the pain and to avoid those problems. But truly, the only way to get past and get through those problems is to focus your attention directly on it. So in the Liberated Mind book, Steve calls it turning towards a dinosaur. So there's a dinosaur chasing you and you could keep running away, but that's not necessarily going to fix your problem. But if you turn around and you face that problem head on, while it might hurt in the moment, it might be difficult in the moment, when you give yourself that opportunity to feel all the feels, to get real with that pain, you can learn how to take more effective action, even when it's hard, even when standing up for yourself and standing up for the truth and standing up for what you believe is difficult. When you get that practice of facing those fears and facing that challenge head on, it becomes easier and easier. This is why we don't typically start, even in our own lives, on things that are the most difficult or the most challenging. Is because those are the things that are going to cause the most, they're going to be the hardest to deal with. And if we put ourselves in situations where we're exposing ourselves to environmental variables which are so um, challenging, then it's going to be hard to maintain that effort over time if just the act of facing those fears or facing those challenges is difficult. And so we can apply the same principles which apply to others that we work with, which is to focus on something that is difficult, but it's not the most difficult thing. So you're getting practice you're getting practice thinking about those difficult things, coming up with a plan, enacting on the plan, and seeing change. Okay? I've identified a problem. I know why it's a problem. I've analyzed it. I know why it's a problem. I've come up with some solutions to address that. And now I'm engaging in actions to address that problem. The more practice that you get in incorporating those skills and actions into your daily life, the easier it will become to challenge those more difficult or to handle those more difficult challenges in your life. If you start with the most difficult thing first, it's going to be easy to give up because it is going to be hard. And so the concept of priming and behavioral momentum really come into play here. So that if you start with a small action and small steps towards the bigger goal, you start with one step, and then one step becomes, your stride becomes longer. You take bigger and bigger steps towards your end goal. And so for me, the big thing in my life that I have had to confront and face is this idea of standing up for the truth. So I'm a truth seeker and I'm a truth teller, and I want people to understand what is actually happening so we can all be on the same page and we can move forward together. But in my personal and professional life, I've found myself stuck when things are happening and I know things should be different, and I want to say something, and I want to do something, but this overwhelming sense of fear, anxiety takes over my body and my brain and my vocal cords, and I had this pattern of just not saying anything. Okay, well, maybe next time. I didn't think of the right words to say. I was afraid that it would it would upset the other person if I said those things. And kind of called out what I saw as the problem. So I wouldn't do things. And so this is my own personal goal and my own personal challenge is to, when I see something wrong, when I see something that needs to be changed, I need to say something. And the latency between the trigger, like the antecedent, that environmental cue that I saw something wrong, the latency between I see something and I say something, initially it would just, I wouldn't say anything, so you can latency infinity, right? But gradually through working on these skills personally, I've been able to decrease and further that latency between the stimulus and the response. I see something wrong, I say something about it. But that has taken a lot of practice because it's not easy. I have this idea that, I see something and my thought is, oh, that's wrong, and I should say something. I should stand up for what's real. But then my throat would close and my words would get stuck in my throat, and then I just turn away and shut down and not say anything. And so this has been my own personal goal to decrease that latency so I can face things as they come, even when they're hard. So once you have identified what's your problem, what the issues are in your life, the things that are causing you to struggle, and you have really come to terms with who you want to be as a person. Okay, this is my conceptualized self. This is who I really want to be. Let's bring this all together into a plan of action. And that is what this course is going to be all about. We're going to be highly focused on identifying for yourself what are those things that are causing you challenges in your life. Where are they coming from? How are they impacting your life? What is it that you want to do? What would your life look like if this was no longer a problem? What would you be doing? So we always go back to best practices with goal setting. We're not setting a goal related to what we don't want to do. We're setting a goal related to what we do want to do. And those goals are founded in our values. And that takes doing the hard work. And I'm not going to lie to you, like, this is difficult work, and this is going to take you to a place where you might be uncomfortable with, and that's okay. Like, notice that and try to think about why it feels difficult. Because the more honest assessment that we can do of ourselves, the more clearly we can define our values and what we truly care about. We can set more realistic goals. We can work to create plans of action. We can share those things with others. Share ourselves with others sharing ourselves with others is a critical component that 4 years ago I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have said that communicating to your community and sharing those commitments with others is important. But I've learned that over the past few years that is one of the critical components. And those social relationships, those bonds that you create with others by talking about the things that are challenging in your life and talking about your own patterns of behavior and talking about your own fears for the future, and talking about your plans and what you want to do, it creates even more of that behavioral momentum, because not only now was I thinking about it, not only was I writing about it, now I'm talking about it. And when you talk about it and share that, it becomes more real. And then the final component is to execute upon that plan regularly. And so, having a system for yourself where you can effectively set your goals, set your plans of action, set deadlines for yourself, and track those things over time. The more fluently that you can do those things in your life, the more able you are going to be able to create peace in your own life. And once you have more peace in your own life, that will translate out to more peace in your family's life, because you can more effectively address the challenges within your home environment. And the more effectively you are able to address the challenges within your home environment, the more effectively you will be able to address the issues within your community environment. And that is what I mean when I say taking action for a peaceful world. You take action to create peace in your own world, and once you have peace within your own world, you can take action to create peace within your family's world. And once you've taken effective action to create peace in your family's world, you can take more effective action in your community to create peace in your community. And if the science of behavior is effectively disseminated to the majority of humankind, and we are all taking effective action to create peace in our own worlds, our own families, and our own communities, the effect of that will be on the trajectory from point A to point Z. It is my hypothesis that will create more effective, more efficient change, and we will be able to get to the end goal, that the peaceful world, in a more efficient and a quicker manner. So I will leave this section on this last thought, that we are all capable of pivoting. And it might seem hard, and it is, but it's not impossible. The things that we do are not set in stone, and we can utilize the science of behavior in our own lives to create change for ourselves, and it truly doesn't matter how long the problem has existed. And truly, to me, the crux is the more effectively we are able to address our own challenges and our own problems and make this a reality for ourselves in our own lives, the more effectively we will be able to disseminate the science of behavior more broadly by not only saying that behavior science can change the world, but actually showing people how that happens and how it works in reality. And so I am really happy that you all have decided to join us, and because you're showing me and you're showing the rest of the world that you are ready to take action for yourself and do what we say that we're set out to do, which is to create a more peaceful world for everyone. So, what was that? Okay. All right, so I'm going to try to get my video back up here. And we're going to be switching from more of the kind of instructional component to the hands-on component. All right, so we're at 10:45, and so what I would like to do, because my video is not working and we've got 15 minutes left in our time today, what I would like to do is go through the activities, and then you can go into the dashboard on your own time to complete the activities for yourself. So I think that's going to work for today, and we'll see if that is going to be how the future lessons are going to work the most effectively. Again, I would appreciate feedback on how the lessons are flowing and how it's all working, because I have an idea of what this is going to look like, but when it's actually happening in real time, it might not be working how I intended. So there are 3 objectives within this lesson, and there are 3 activities, or there's 1 activity associated with each objective. And so the first objective is to conduct a personal assessment. And we all know the word assessment can feel a little bit intimidating, but this is just an estimation of the nature, ability, or quality of something. And so what you're going to do for this activity is to create a list of things in your life which cause you suffering, and identifying how long each one of those things has been a problem, and then putting them in order from worst to least. So the things that are impacting you most in your life into the things that are impacting you the least. Okay. And so I have an example of from my perspective, when I completed this activity, these are the things that I came up with. And so this is the model that you can follow, or you can state your challenges however you choose. So my issues that I have seen that have impacted my life are that I don't always stand up for people when it's called for. I lose contact. I've lost contact with things that matter to me the most. Sometimes I lack boundaries and the ability to say no when needed. I've struggled with constantly feeling in a state of distress, and nothing ever feels right or just how it needs to be or how I want it to be. I've had issues in my life related to blaming other people for my problems, and not taking responsibility for my own role in the problem. I've had feelings of suffering related to not feeling cared about for my family, and so having this sense of sadness that I'm alone in my life. And then I've also had issues in my life related to this sense of needing to pick up the pieces after everyone creates messes. So I've always been the person who has gone behind and cleaned up cleaned up behind everyone. So those, when I completed this part of this exercise, this is my list of the things that have caused me to suffer and how it's impacting my life. And then I put them in order, so the top three are the top three that I am going to focus my attention on. So the second activity is related to identifying your needed areas of improvement. And the important thing to remember is that we are all human. We all have room to grow. We're not perfect. Sometimes we get this idea, we get a set of training and it's like, oh, I know this now, so I have to be perfect all the time. Well, that's not reality. We're not perfect. We're all human. We all have room to grow. And the key here is to be kind, caring, and compassionate to everybody that you encounter, and most importantly, yourself. So this exercise asks you to select 3 things from your suffering inventory to take action on the things that you want to address. And then so you pick the 3 things, and then you're going to be writing about what your life would be like if that source of suffering was eliminated. So if that thing was not such a problem for you anymore, what would your life be like, and what would your family's life be like? So my responses to this exercise are as follows. So if I stood up for myself and others more, then the truth of the matter would be the driving force behind creating change. No longer would I sit idly by and let things happen. That's what it would look like for me. The second one, if I was constantly in contact with the things that meant the most to me, I would have more joy in my life because I would be doing things with people I love and respect. And lastly, if I set clear boundaries and only took on commitments that were within my abilities to complete, I wouldn't feel as though I constantly failed and was drained of resources. So I'm sure that many of you can relate to one, if not all of those things. But so for your own self, be thinking about what would it look like? What would it look like, and what would it feel like to you and to others if that thing that causes you the most pain and suffering, those things, what if they were gone? What would your life look like? Right. And then the third activity, the third step, is to write goals related to those areas. And you've all been trained to write goals and write them objectively. And so following the SMARTER goals model, which is to make them specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, evaluated, recognized and rewarded, or revisited. And so you can put as much effort into your goals as you want at this point. We are going to, through the course of this series, or through the series of these lessons, we are going to be talking about these more and refining them, but this is a time for you to just get on paper in general what your goals are and what you think what the actions that you think that you want to take in relation to making those goals, those steps to achieve those goals. Okay, so for my goals, in related to standing up for myself and others, my goal is that when I'm faced with a situation in which it's essential to advocate for myself or others, I will speak up in a way that is caring and compassionate and take further action if necessary. My goal related to making meaningful contact with joy is that every month I will engage in 10 actions related to things that bring me joy, such as playing the piano, attending community functions, and reaching out to distant friends with a phone call. And in relation to setting realistic boundaries, my goal is that when asked to do something that's not already on my to-do list, before saying yes, I will honestly evaluate whether this activity will create conflicts with other important tasks or timelines before committing. And so these are the actions that I'm willing to take, that I've identified that I can do them. I'm pretty sure they'll work, and they are most definitely worth it because they are in alignment with the things that I value. So after we're done here, it doesn't have to be today, but within the next week, if you could go into your dashboard and complete those activities, that would be awesome to get us started. Okay, Kim, Kim had a question about the personal assessment and not being able to see it afterwards. There should be an option to view it after the fact, but I will double check that that function is working and get back to you all on that. So there should, once you submit an answer, there should be a way for you to see that answer again. But we'll go to the back end after the class and make sure that's actually happening. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so the last book that is part of this course is Flip the Script. And within that book, there are 10 behavioral flips that we'll be talking about. And these are habits. So these are habits that that you'll learn to incorporate into your daily life, and with the goal of creating a more valued life. So the two things that are listed in the homework for this week are a no technology time growth routine and the blessed bank habit. And then we'll be going through the rest of the flips throughout the courses. But you can see just from the titles, and if you've gotten the book and flipped through it at all, that while Coit is not a behavioral scientist by training, his training has brought him into contact with these skills, and he has come up with some really cool activities and things that you can incorporate into your life that really do seem to have a pretty significant impact on their daily actions. And okay, so I'll get to homework in a second. So between the sessions, you'll do the activities for the objectives. There's the checkout questions, which is just a short survey for you to complete to provide us with feedback about the course so we can continue to make improvements on it. And then the homework, which is optional, but will provide a more immersive experience if you are up for it, is the homework for this week is to read the chapters that are associated with lesson 2, to complete no technology time daily growth routine. And so what this looks like is just committing to waking up 15 to 30 minutes earlier than you normally do, and reading something that you find empowering or inspirational. And so just dedicating just a short amount of time every day in the morning before you jump on your phone, before you get on Facebook, before you do anything else. Well, I go make coffee and get my coffee first, and then I do my reading. So you go get some coffee. But the first thing is to wake up early, read something inspirational to get your day started off right. And then the baseline blessings exercise to create your blessings bank is after you've done your reading, is to spend a few minutes, like five or so minutes, writing down the 3 things that you are blessed to have in your life. And the other thing, so this is our first lesson in our first course, and we are continuing to build our community. And so if you are willing or able to or motivated or inspired to share about your experience with the courses with your colleagues, you are free to do that as well. And I apologize for the video. We will make sure that the technology is consistently working next time as well. So if you have any questions, please ask them, and we'll we'll get to them. Within the dashboard, you can also, I've created connections with each of you within the dashboard, and so you can ask me questions directly on there. And I'll be throughout the week posting some things within the dashboard to get everybody make sure that everybody is on the same page and that they're able to use this